more protected in conservative Christian homes? That's what we're going to be talking about today on the Bare Marriage Podcast. Hello, I am Sheila Ray Gregoire from baremarriage.com, where we like to talk about healthy, evidence-based biblical advice for your sex life and your marriage. And I am joined today by my daughter, Rebecca Lindenbach.
Hello, hello.
And last week's podcast was epic. Mm-hmm. It was long.
Yep.
We were looking at the empowered wife. I think it may have been the longest podcast we've ever done. I don't know. If it wasn't,
The Power of a Praying Wife was also really long.
I know, but I think we beat this by like 12 minutes.
Okay.
I'm not sure. But the empowered wife was just such a hot mess. You know, by Laura Doyle.
Was she empowered?
Yeah. She was empowered to enable him to be completely emotionally immature and get whatever he wanted so that they didn't fight. I mean, it's insane advice. And even though that one, it's the first time we looked at a book that wasn't a Christian book, but it does really big in Christian circles. Mm-hmm. And what it ended up doing was making women far less safe because they had no way of calling out or getting help when things were going wrong because everything was their fault.
Yes.
And they were supposed to put all of their trust in this man, like giving up all their finances, giving up everything. And that was supposed to magically make him perfect. And that's a theme that we see a lot. And I want to explore that today by asking the question, you know, complementarians and those who argue for men having authority over women often say they do it to protect women. Mm-hmm. But is that what we're seeing?
Yeah.
So we're going to take a look at it. And this got prompted by something in our patron group. So I want to do a shout out to our patron group who are amazing. And we have, I don't know how many hundreds, like 500 or 600 people in our Facebook group. Yeah. And not everyone is totally active. So it's not like you get bombarded by posts, but it is a really, really fun one. I run everything by people there first so that I can get feedback on what we're doing. And it's a great place to go. So check out our page. You can join for as little as $5 a month and be part of our Facebook group. At higher tiers, you'll also get access to things like the course that Joanna's going to be running in the winter on developing a sexual ethic, on our book clubs, and so many more things. And of course, when you do give to our patron or to the Good Fruit Faith Initiative of the Bosco Foundation, it helps to fund our research and our translation efforts, and we have lots of Spanish stuff coming up, which is so cool, and our peer-reviewed papers, which we hope to have some more news on soon too. So yeah, like it's just part of how you can be part of this whole movement that we are growing. Okay, so here's how this conversation on Patreon got started.
Yes,
I don't know if you remember because it was a couple of months ago. This has been like I've saved this, wondering where we could fit it in, but we had been every now and then the topic of sending nude photos to your spouse comes up again for whatever reason. We end up mentioning it on the podcast or someone brings it up and it starts this whole conversation again because of this advice that Gary Thomas gave in the book Married Sex, where he told women that he praised women for sending nude photos to their husbands because now neurologically he will be focused on you and not on other women's bodies. And he basically demolished all the very legitimate reasons why women might not want to do it.
Well, he didn't actually demolish them, but he just...
it's not like he dismissed them. He dismissed them.
Yeah,
that's a better word.
He pretty much just got ahead of it. It's like, and you might think that this isn't biblical, but it is. It's not biblical. And you might do this, and it's like, okay, but what you're doing is you're wearing down her boundaries here.
Yeah.
Like, it's not acceptable.
But one of the things he never really addressed was how inherently dangerous this is.
Nope.
And I had so many messages and we had so many people commenting on how they did this because their ex, who was abusive, really pushed them to do it, and now they're divorced and he has all these pictures of her. Yeah. And there was one woman who even couldn't get promoted in her government job because she worked in the intelligence field because her ex-husband had these photos of her because
potential for blackmail.
And it's like, wow, okay.
Well, and not only that, like another really little thing too is I find that whenever, especially evangelical authors, and it's because they don't like to talk about specifics, right? Is they talk about like nude photos, but what does that mean?
Yeah.
Are you talking to a woman whose husband has specific fetishes that he's requesting that she do photos of that are really degrading and are actually nude? But a lot of these men mean nude photos mean like a picture of you in a bra or something.
Yeah, like a boudoir photo.
But it's more like, if you'd show your friends and they'd be like, oh my gosh, you look so good. Like those are a wide range and they don't talk about the specifics either. They just say, just do it.
Yeah.
And it's like, that is not healthy.
Yeah.
That doesn't help people have conversations about like, even if you are someone who was like, oh, I don't mind like a sexy photo every now and then, but what does sexy mean to you?
Yep.
right? Like,
Yeah.
are you taking a picture in the dress you're wearing to dinner off your shoulder? Because that's what some people mean. This is the thing. You have to understand. People have different definitions. You have to be clear with what you're talking about. People say nude photos when they have clothes on.
Yeah, I know.
It's bizarre. I'm like,
is.
people, you have to think about what your audience actually might take away from this.
Yeah.
And to making it over and over again, it was like, well, you scared anybody watching porn? Why don't you just make him better porn? Is not a good solution. And it's incredibly dangerous for her.
Yeah.
So-
and even if you don't have a divorce or abusive situation, your kids could see it. You could die and someone goes through your computer. Like, it's just not. Anyway, here's what the person posted in Patreon, which I want to talk about. So this is what she wrote, and I'll read her post because it was good. For me, Gary's post made me think of the broader issue of the church asking women to make risky choices when they purport that it is the role of men to protect women. Just like having nude photos of yourself out there is risky if your husband ends up lacking character, becoming a stay-at-home mom or trad wife is economically risky, and women often take both of these risks in part for the happiness and comfort of men under pressure by the culture of the church. Personally, I'm in a stage of life where I'm seeing multiple friends trapped in bad marriages or unable to divorce easily because of the economic risks they took. So this is where my mind ended up going. And while I'm not in a bad marriage, I took the same risks in part because the church led me to believe it was my role. I'm currently struggling with owning that I made my choices and my mistakes are mine, while also acknowledging I gave others the power to speak into my life because I believed that they were speaking for God, but now I think differently. What I was taught was more about what was best for the hierarchy in our church than about what God asks of me. And in the life of my friend, I see the church struggling to help a woman who made the same choices I did. She became a stay-at-home homeschooling mom who submitted to her husband. But unlike my husband, her husband is a coercively controlling monster who drained their bank account so she wouldn't have the money to hire a lawyer during their divorce. Mm-hmm. Should the church have a moral obligation to teach women to protect themselves when they enter marriage in case their husband isn't who he said he would be? How do we make it harder for abusive men in our church to control their wives when men like Gary are suggesting risky choices?
Yeah. Well, and a lot of the protection discussion that they talk about, it's about protecting them and letting them have a soft life. That's what I see on the trad wife stuff. It's about, what if it's okay to have a soft life, to not have to go to work, to have to do this. Mm-hmm. But like, being solely responsible for the mental load in your family is not a soft life.
No, it isn't.
Like, I'm saying, if like what's so silly is that like they don't have to choose. You can still have this like view that men are responsible for protecting and caring for their wives as gentle fawn deer things. Like, you can have that vibe and still have her have a job because you're waking up early and bringing her breakfast in bed on the weekends, and you're taking care of the laundry while she sits and reads a book because you're her hero. Like, you can do stuff to help her have a soft life. That doesn't mean she has to be fully dependent on you.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the other thing is, trad wives don't have soft lives.
No, they don't.
It's all a lie. But they're selling it that way in order to give, to put men having just simply more freedom and more privilege than women, and putting women in more inherently risky positions. Yeah. So I was thinking about several ways that evangelical advice often does lead women to have more inherently risky lives. And sure, we have like the nude photos thing. Yes. Okay. Or anything to do with sex. Anything sex related at all.
Yeah.
Really encouraging women.
Literally none of it is like, make sure the woman's protected and happy.
And then there's not like, this is different because this isn't actually advice on like what you should do, but just the whole culture of like not challenging men and following authority does put women, especially young women, at risk of sexual assault within the church. So we know that. But then there's other things. There's things like you should share bank accounts. Okay. Yeah. Which we'll talk about how this can be really, the problem with it is that a lot of this stuff is actually good advice
and protective in many cases
in a safe marriage, and it actually does help you get ahead financially, but it also does leave people more vulnerable when things go badly. Don't go to college. Don't work outside the home. Be a trad wife. And now we're even seeing don't vote. So, all of these things are coming up, and all of these things are inherently risky. And the problem is that divorce, infidelity, and abuse are not actually that much lower in evangelical circles. And in some subgroups of evangelicalism, like abuse especially, is higher than in the general population. Like in your hyper conservative, where men really have privilege and women basically are erased. Like your independent fundamentalist Baptist, your Duggar type families, all of John MacArthur type places. Those places seem to have higher rates of abuse.
Well, again, from what I understand from the data, it's because the women are less likely to leave. And so whereas in the general population, Brad may have abused Carol, and then Carol says, heck no, I'm out of this. In the church, that relationship lasts for 27 years.
Yeah, I think it was Gillette et al. In 2014. I'll see if I can find that study that said that, the problem with these circles is that women don't leave. And so they'll end up being in these marriages for like 30 years.
Yeah, these men who otherwise may not have actually ended up in a long-term relationship are married.
Right. Yeah. Right, exactly. So I want to play a TikTok that's been making the rounds. It's on a channel called Courtney Gets Fit, and I'll link it so that you can find her. She's processing a lot of this in real time, and she needs encouragement, and she seems to be really hurting, but she's trying very hard. But this is what she had to say last fall, and so let's just listen in.
I mean, I feel like a little girl who needs their mommy because I don't know how to take care of myself. I have no income. I have no money. I use my husband's credit card and I use my husband's money. And 2 weeks ago, he told me that he wants to move forward with divorce. I don't, like, it's just terrifying. I'm 37 and I'm like scared. I have no idea what to do or what I'm doing or how to take care of myself. Thank God he's letting me live in his house. And I say his house because it is his house, because when we got married, he told me that my name isn't going to go on the deed because he doesn't want to put that debt on me. But I'm getting to live in his house. I'm getting to stay in his house, thank God. Other than that, like, I get to, have somewhere to sleep, but, like, how do I feed my kids? How do I feed myself? Oh, my gosh. I need my mom. I need my mommy to come and take care of me. That's it. That is terrifying. As a 30-year-old, like, in your 30s, you're a mother. Like, I have 2 kids to take care of. And I don't even know how I'm supposed to take care of this. That is terrifying.
Now, for context, I don't think it was in this video, but in other ones, her husband is 20 years older than she is.
Oh, wow.
So she got married in her early 20s
to someone in their 40s.
In their 40s, who already was financially stable, who already had a house, etc. And he's saying, well, I don't want to put your name on the deed because I don't want you to go into debt. You know, I don't want you to have debt associated, and I don't want you to have your name on our bank accounts. He seems so much older and wiser and smarter, and you don't need your names on our bank accounts. You can just use my credit cards. And now they're divorcing, and she has nothing.
Yep.
She has absolutely nothing. This is what we see a lot: is these women who have had the 8 kids, and they're homeschooling all 8 kids, and this is often part of the things that make women actually more vulnerable too, is having this many kids, you know, and then you have no money to your name. You have no way of making a living. You haven't been in the workforce since you were like 17 years old and you did a McDonald's shift. Like, what are you supposed to do when you find out that your husband is, or you finally admit to yourself that he's really abusive, or he just leaves you?
Yeah.
Like, what are you supposed to do? And that's something that the evangelical church hasn't grappled with and seems to refuse to grapple with, because they keep talking about how all of this stuff just protects women.
Well, and it's because they see these things as a false dichotomy, right? So either you homeschool your kids and you have kids, and so therefore you don't have a job and you're completely reliant on your husband, or you're a godless socialist who doesn't have babies and works a CEO corporate position for 7 different companies. Like, there's no in between. Right. And the majority of people live in the in-between. Like, the majority of people have normal jobs and have kids and love their kids and have to figure things out. And it is bizarre that there doesn't seem to be a recognition of the fact that you can be in the middle there. Like, that's what I see anyway, where it's like, they don't take family seriously. We do. So therefore you have to be home.
Yeah.
all the time, and you're not allowed to have a job, and you have to submit to your husband. I'm like, or you can love your family and figure out what works for you. And I'm saying that as someone for whom our family, both of us work from home. We do homeschool our kids. That's a huge value of mine. And a lot of that is context specific. You know, like I'm saying that as someone who is kind of the dream for these guys.
I know.
But I also still do work, and Connor works, and we are able to make it happen.
I often think that if these guys knew how we really lived, like we're super into gardening and canning.
Yeah, I had the neighborhood boys over just a half an hour ago, and they were helping me harvest cucumber and tomatoes, and it was very exciting for them.
Yes. I knit constantly. I made your kids a whole wardrobe of socks
Yeah.
recently. like we knit, we can. We garden.
Yeah, I'm starting when we have a little bit more free time. I'm going to go back to baking bread. I like baking bread.
To bake.
Like,
one of my favorite things to do is cook. I was a stay-at-home mom. Like we sound like we're the hyper conservative dream.
it's very funny. It's like the majority of my wardrobe, not today obviously, but the majority of my wardrobe is like peasant blouses and long skirts. Like that's my vibe.
Yeah.
And this is what's so funny is they preach this protecting women and having a soft life, and I'm like, I have a soft life. Because that's a huge priority of mine. And now a lot of that for me is because I find life stressful, now realizing it's because of ADHD. And so I need to have a soft life or I can't function.
Yeah.
And my husband doesn't do it by being like, you can't do things.
Yeah.
You don't have choices.
Yeah.
Soft life doesn't mean a lack of choices. It means you have a partner.
Yeah.
That's what actually gives you a soft
Yes.
life. And so these
Yes.
women don't have, the men are not willing to be a partner. And so what they do is instead they're like, well, autonomy is stressful. And so we'll remove autonomy and convince women that it's softness. It's not softness.
Yeah.
It's like a trap. It's not good. And you can be a stay-at-home mom and be protected.
Yeah.
You can not work and be protected. Absolutely. Lots of people do it.
Yeah.
It's possible.
Yeah.
But like this is actually where the joint bank accounts are really helpful.
Yeah.
It's like if you are not working and not bringing in your own money and you don't have your name on a bank account.
Yeah, that is huge.
Oh my gosh.
That is huge. Yeah. Like,
And then a lot of people say, oh, but we have joint bank accounts. We have to have separate bank accounts, but he just gives me money every month. No, because now you don't have access to all of the investments, to the RSPs or whatever it is in the US. You don't have access to
401ks?
You only have your spending money. That is not appropriate. You need to have your name on everything that is an asset. Everything is legally both of yours. And if he balks at that, that's a problem. It's a serious problem. And so that's the thing where it's like joint bank accounts, incredibly protective actually.
Yeah. And then there's times where it's not. Like there's times where if you know you're in an abusive relationship, it's actually a good idea
to get your own
ready
account.
to leave to get your own account so that you can start to squirrel money away to.
Or like
to
if someone has like massive overspending or like gambling issues, then absolutely they should be on a spending account.
Yeah.
And that's it. Like 100%.
Yeah.
But like that's different.
Yeah.
That's an aberration.
Yeah, but you should definitely have your name on all the deeds. Yeah. And I think another way that you can be protected even as a stay-at-home mom, and this is something that I really told you and Katie, is I just want you to always have skills that you can sell and work from home in some way, or work part-time if you want to be home with your kids. If that's a value that you have, that you want to be home with your kids, you still have to have a way to earn money if you need to.
Yep.
And even during high school, you guys both got your lifeguarding certifications, which actually gave you decent part-time jobs, more money than most people were making at the time.
Yep.
And then, just having things that you can do from home if that's what you want to do. If you want to stay home, you still have to have skills. And that way, because even if you're in a good marriage, you never know when your husband's going to be in a car accident or have a health issue, or maybe he's in a job he absolutely hates and he didn't know he was going to hate it when he went to university, but it's like not a match for him at all. And he really, really wants to retrain, because he doesn't want to hate his life for the next 30 years.
Which is valid.
Yeah, So then you have to have a way to pick up the slack while he's retraining, right? Like you should never be in a situation where one person is incapable of making any kind of money.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think like when we were talking about this topic though, about this idea of like, oh, but like we have to protect women, right? Like we protect women. We protect our women from having stressful lives. We protect our women from the horrors of jobs and things like that, right? Or even just complementarianism in general. Like the vibe is because he's a man, he has a gun, but he's a good guy because he won't shoot her.
Yes.
And egalitarianism says, why does he have a gun? No one needs a gun. Right? And this is the difference here where it's like, well, we protect our women. Okay, until you don't.
Yeah.
But why are you in the position to dictate her future? Why are you so insecure that you can't have her also be able to be standing on her own for you to feel like you have anything to offer? Because when I hear this, I think, oh, that's incredibly insecure masculinity. Yeah. Right? It's, I can only be a protector and provider and good husband if she is in essence a dependent.
Yeah.
That's not healthy, you know. And again, don't hear what I'm not saying. What I'm not saying is if you're a stay-at-home mom who doesn't work, you're a dependent and he's no. I have lots of friends who are full stay-at-home moms and they're crushing it and it's great and it's the right choice for their families because he's just makes a crap ton of money and she's just really, really good at this and really enjoys it and they're both really happy and everything is safe and they're equal partners and it's not that he works and she doesn't, is that they just fulfill different roles, right? Yeah. Like absolutely, you can do it. But what I'm saying is there's a difference here where it's like, it's my role as a man and it's your role as a woman. And if you start making more money, I feel insecure. I feel like I'm not doing my job. I feel like you're stepping outside of what you're allowed to do. I feel like all the stuff in Emerson Eggerichs talking about how
there's this bizarre thing in Love and Respect where he says that like it's essential to a man's identity to provide for his wife. And so even if she is working outside the home, and Shanti Feldon says this too, like even if she is working outside the home, she's never going to feel that need to provide in the same way that he does. And so even if she's making more money, he is still feeling the need to provide in a way that she isn't.
And not only that, if she's making more money, she has to be careful because that in and of itself is disrespectful to him. And I'm like, like, I'm sorry, but like, it's just the only thing I can think of is like, this is the Christian equivalent of those cars with the super loud motors. Yeah. It's like,
oh yeah, compensating for something.
Like,
but you know, my husband works in a very female dominated profession. He's a pediatrician and most pediatricians graduating today are female. And a lot of his colleagues have stay-at-home husbands, you know, because that's worked better for them. Like pediatrics, it would have been very difficult for you guys growing up if I also had worked outside the home just because of the nature of dad's hours, right? Like he was often gone all weekend. He was gone at night. Like the house was very, like he was absent a lot. And so having one person at home, you know, for stability,
it enabled him to do his job.
It did. And there's a lot of professions that are like that.
But that's also one of the reasons why pediatricians get paid so much. It's because there's training, but it's also because they
are the lowest paying specialty next to psychiatry.
It's true.
In Ontario.
It's true. But they still, compared to like literally everyone else in the country.
Yes.
But because it does impact the family, right? Like you understand that if you're someone who has kids, your spouse cannot work a typical job.
Yeah.
If you are in medicine in this way, it's really hard.
Difficult.
Or you're hiring nannies, you're hiring overnight nurses, you're hiring a whole bunch of stuff out. So like this is the thing, like it is how this works, right? This is expected for this profession. So like stay-at-home dads, that's a great idea. It works.
And this is what we found in our research too, is that people fulfilling traditional gender roles didn't do worse than people who, like this idea that being a stay-at-home mom is bad for you or traditional gender roles are somehow bad for the marriage. That's never been what we were arguing. But what our research did show is that if you feel that she is supposed to stay at home because she's a woman, then those roles are bad for you.
Because then we're in the situation where he has a gun, but he's a good guy, so he won't shoot it. Versus me and Connor, where I've been the primary parent for many of our years because it just made sense.
Yeah.
Where there wasn't a gun.
And when two people are able to get together and say, hey, what do we want to do? What works best for our family? And you figure out, you know what, right now, how about you stay at home? And we've done everything. Like Keith and I have done everything. For years, I stayed at home and did nothing. Then I started to write and speak. So I was working from home and Dad was still working. And now he has really cut back on work and he doesn't work that much anymore because he's helping.
He's watching the kids right now.
He's watching the kids right now. Yeah, he actually does a lot of babysitting. He does more of the grandparenting role than I do. which is kind of
he's
fun.
doing Lego and crafts with the kids upstairs.
Which is kind of fun because I did more of the parenting role than he did. So it's kind of, but so we've done everything over the course of our lives, but we've done it what works, and that's the key thing, is that when the evangelical church says there's only one way to do this, it does put women at a disadvantage. But when you say, hey, you guys are partners and you can work this out however works for you, like, that's great.
It doesn't mean you can't have 8 kids and homeschool them and be a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah.
It just means that it's a decision and you're protected because you're an equal part in the marriage, not someone who's just there to fulfill the role and fantasy of the person who has all the power.
Yep. There's an interesting study that I read. It's an international study. They looked at the topic of economic abuse in the context of other types of abusive relationships, and what are the specific economic things. And they found a bunch of things that as soon as a woman gets together with a man who's eventually going to become physically abusive, when she starts cohabiting with him, her income falls pretty much automatically, and the household income falls right away. That this isn't necessarily like, it's a complicated relationship, and they're trying to tease out what are the different aspects of this. But I just want to read one thing they said. Abusive men impose economic costs on all their female partners, even those who do not report physical violence. And they developed a model of abusive relationships where women do not perfectly observe their partner's type, and abusive men have an incentive to use coercive control to sabotage women's outside options and their ability to later exit the relationship.
Yeah.
So basically, when you're in an abusive relationship, economic abuse will be part of it, because by controlling a woman economically, it makes it harder for her to leave.
Yeah, it's often a part of it. Yeah.
It's often a part of it. And they gave a bunch of different examples of this, like how abusive men will start calling the workplace. We'll make it really hard for her to work there. Yeah. Right. And derail her chances at promotion, et cetera, et cetera. So they target her economically because it makes it harder for her to leave. Yeah. And so I just find it so interesting that if a feature of abuse is to make sure that women aren't economically independent, why is it also a feature of evangelical churches?
Yeah, exactly.
To discourage women getting education, to discourage women working outside the home.
And it's because they don't have anything that they're actually offering. Yeah. Again, like, if you're in a good marriage, there's not a reason to have to not have an escape route, right? Like, like we said in lots of other areas, people aren't stupid. Like, people people aren't dumb. Like, they want things that are good for them. And so if the only way that you can get people to stay in your kind of marriage is to remove their ability to leave, it probably means your marriage isn't good. It probably means there's something else. Like, people want to be married. Even people who don't get married because they're like, I couldn't find anyone, they typically want to get married. Not everyone, obviously, but when we're looking at population statistics, people want long-term, committed, happy marriages. That's what we want. So we're not going to sit around and be like, hey, see this perfectly fine marriage, I'm going to destroy it for no reason, like these churches seem to think that women like to do. That's not what happens. So if the only way that you can get people to stay in marriages and not get divorced to the men in your congregations is by being like, you don't have any money, you have too many kids to support, you don't have anything on your resume, then like, that's a red flag that your marriages just kind of suck. Yeah. Like, your marriages aren't marketable. Yeah. No one wants it. Yeah. It sucks. It's bad. And there are so many other options. And that's just what I hope people start to understand, is that you don't have to, if you're someone who you just want to do mud kitchens with your toddler and be home with them all the time and all this, like, you also can figure out, if that's within your capacity, to figure out how to do that without it being something where you have to give up rights, autonomy, options, financial freedom in order to do that.
And of course, we are very aware that lots of people would love to do that, and
but don't have the option.
Financially, that's not an option for them.
Just not an option. That's also just reality. That's fine. But there's a lot of people who seem to think that, like, well, if your husband is making it sound like you have enough money to do this, but the only way that, like, you guys will be able to do what you both want to do is for you to give up rights. Holy Batman. Red flag. Yeah. Holy, like, don't buy into this idea that, like, you have to be a submissive trad wife in order to be, like, a stay-at-home mom. No. You don't. No. My very, non-traditional homeschooling friends would smack you upside the head for saying that. Like,
Yeah. And also, when churches say that there's only one way to live out God's purposes in your family, and that way is for the man to earn the income and the woman to be a stay-at-home wife. And economically, that is only possible for like 2% of the world's population. Then that is not God's will. Okay. Yeah. Like, if you can do it and you want to, more power to you. Yeah. But just remember that the goal is not to be a dependent on your husband.
No.
The goal is to be a partner with your husband and to find the combination of childcare and paid work that works best for your family at each point in your marriage. And that may shift. And when the church tries to control women in the name of protecting women, that just isn't safe. And we need to stop doing it.
Absolutely.
Stop telling women to do risky things and start just teaching how people can be partners. Yep. Okay, so I have a great interview with a woman from Britain now who is doing some work with churches, educating them on how to identify abuse and helping churches run groups that can help women recover from abuse. And I want to talk to her right now. Well, this is going to be a great conversation that I think a lot of people, unfortunately, are going to need. I am talking with Sally Hope today about her new book, No Visible Scars. Hello, Sally.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, now you started a recovery program that can be used in churches for women coming out of abusive situations, right? What was it called?
Yeah.
Hope?
Always hopeful.
Always hopeful. I love
Always
that.
hopeful. Yeah.
Is that actually your last name, Hope?
No.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, because that's like an awesome name for that then.
It's a great name, isn't it? Yeah. No, it's a pen name. So because I was writing, when I started off writing about abuse, I was writing about my own situation and my own story. So I wanted to have a pseudonym to kind of protect me from my own ex-husband. But it serves to protect from everybody else's as well now. So that's great.
Yes, and I love that. I think that's a brilliant pen name. And you are coming to us from the northwest of England today. So great to have another Commonwealth person on the podcast. And this is a different book. We've featured a lot of books on the podcast, explaining about what abuse is, how to identify abuse, how to get out of abusive situations. This book does that, but it's much more of like a Bible study, devotional, and workbook that can help women process what happened to them. And I think it is so, so needed and so helpful. So thank you for writing it.
Oh, thanks. I think a lot of books about abuse are aimed at the church in general to kind of raise awareness and let people know what abuse is. But I wanted something specifically for the survivors of abuse to help with recovery. Because when I was in that situation myself, I kind of felt like I went through it all alone. And as a Christian, I had all these extra questions that women who aren't Christians don't have to ask and don't have to work through. And I found that the church wasn't great at helping me figure that stuff out. So I kind of did it all on my own. So I wanted there to be a resource for women who are in that same situation, so they don't have to go through it on their own.
Yeah, that's great. And this is a great book to work through as a study group. Just really good. So let's talk about some of the things that are in it, because you have several different specific Bible studies that women can do that I thought were so excellent. They weren't overly long, but the one on Ezer Kenegda, what that actually means, the one on what submission actually means, all these big, big things that we talk about all the time that get so misunderstood and are so wrapped up in abuse in the church because they're misused. And so you do that, and then you also explain what abuse is.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was really important to me with those Bible studies that I didn't want to tell people what they should believe. Because when we experience domestic abuse, and there's a spiritual side to that, the perpetrator will tell us what to believe. So people who are coming out of that, they need to figure stuff out on their own. They don't need to be told this is what you should believe, but we need some pointers. We need to understand that there's more than one Christian perspective, and Christianity is so broad, isn't it? And I wanted my book to be useful for everybody, no matter what tradition they come from. So when I run my programs, which is the same material, I have women there who are evangelical, women who are Catholics, women who are Methodists. It's such a broad range of Christians, and I wanted the book to have the same appeal. So it needed to kind of guide rather than tell.
Yeah,
That
and I
makes
thought
sense.
that was a real
Yeah,
difference that I noticed. Like it was like,
yeah,
hey, we can discover this together because, as you're looking at Easter Connecto, you talk about, okay, here's all the different ways that this is used of God. This word is used of God. What does this convey to you? And then what does that make you think of if it's also used of women? Like I thought that was great because yeah, you weren't telling, you were inviting us
yeah,
in
yeah,
to study
yeah,
together.
absolutely. So here's a little bit of information, and what questions does that
Yeah.
make us think about, and where can we go with that?
Yeah. And then there is like a bit of a teaching component too, where you help women overcome some of the big hurdles that we have in healing from abuse. And one of them is, I just need to read this quote because I thought it was so good, about how abuse isn't a mistake or them losing control. And you said this. We know these excuses aren't valid because most abusive people manage to control themselves in other situations. They don't behave abusively toward their boss, and they don't behave abusively towards us in front of others. In most cases, if your minister knocked on the door in the middle of your abuser's rage, he would immediately calm down. Why? Because he is in full control. Abuse is always a choice. As adults, we know the difference between right and wrong, and if we use abuse, we are making a choice to exert power over another person to control them. And I think someone needs to hear that today. I think there's
Yeah,
people listening who need to hear that today.
yeah. We're so often told that men struggle to control themselves, aren't we?
Yeah.
In terms of sexually, but also in terms of their temper. Men,
Hmm.
it's so hard for men, they can't control themselves, but I don't buy that.
Yeah. No.
I don't
And
buy that. They absolutely can control themselves because they control themselves when it matters, when they want to control
mm,
themselves.
yeah.
They don't, like I said, they don't lose their temper in front of their boss
Yeah.
because they know they'd get sacked.
Yeah.
They only
So
lose
when
their temper when they want to.
when we look at abuse in the church, there's this other layer, right? Because abuse happens in all marriages. It can happen outside the church, it can happen inside the church, but inside the church, there's this other layer. Because
Mm.
often scripture has been misused or religion has been misused to make women feel like it's their fault or that they have to stay, or that they shouldn't speak up. And as someone who tried to navigate this in the church yourself, how did that affect you?
It almost made me lose my faith. If it wasn't for Jesus, I would have lost my faith. So
Yeah.
when I first left, I was so angry with God because I had this whole, God. At first, I felt God was disappointed in me because I'd not managed to hold my marriage together, because I'd got divorced, I'd not been a good enough wife. God hates divorce, so I thought God must hate me.
Hmm.
But then
Hmm.
it went from that to being angry with God because I couldn't understand why God had let this happen and why God had allowed me to be abused and then demanded I forgive.
Yeah.
It felt like God placed all these demands on me, but didn't actually do anything to help me. So yeah, I was really, really angry. And it took me a while. I said, I don't believe in God anymore, which was a lie because once you believe in God, you can't not believe in God. It doesn't work like that. But I decided I was going to not believe in God anymore. And so I stopped reading my Bible, I stopped going to church, I stopped engaging with God, full stop, but God wasn't having any of that. So
Hmm.
wherever I went, I'd just be maybe scrolling through my Facebook feed or even watching kids' TV with my children, and there would just be the message that I needed to hear that week. And I'm sure an atheist would say, well, that's just coincidence, but it was more than coincidence. Whatever I needed to hear, I heard, and it was always, you're loved, I love you, I don't hate you. This is not your fault. It was all nice, good stuff. The gentle stuff. God was gentle with me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Mm.
And as you've been working with women to help them heal from abuse and to try to educate the church on what's happening, can you give me some examples of how like religion can actually be used to control women or to you use the simple example of Anne and the crossbody purse. Do you want to tell that story? I thought that was so
Oh,
something a
yeah.
lot of us can relate to.
Yeah. So in my church, we were always encouraged as older women to kind of mentor younger women and have that relationship. So, I was in my 30s and was in her maybe early 20s, and she used to babysit for me. And we used to, I kind of feel that she used to kind of look to me for wisdom and spending time with the family. And I remember she once told me that she hadn't realized that if she wore her bag across with the strap across her body, going between her breasts, men
Mhm.
like that. And she hadn't realized this until a male friend in the church told
Mm.
her that he liked that he could see the outline of her breasts when she wore her bag
Mm.
like that. And so now she always carries her bag differently because she didn't want to be a temptress to her brothers in Christ. And at
Right.
the time, I was in an abusive relationship, and I congratulated her on this. But now looking back, I realize that the responsibility is always put on women, isn't it? To
Mhm.
make sure we change, to take responsibility for men's sin. But actually, it was really inappropriate of that friend to be
Mhm.
talking about her body to her like that. This is a young man from church. He shouldn't have been, he shouldn't have been
Yeah.
talking to her like that. And she shouldn't have felt that she couldn't do something as simple as carrying a bag in a way that's comfortable and doesn't give you backache,
Right.
just to
And
not
also
be able
that's
to
safer.
learn.
Like that it's
Yeah,
safer to carry a bag like that. It's much harder to steal.
yeah,
Like
exactly. Exactly. There's so many benefits to crossbody bags.
yeah.
You carry a bag on one shoulder, it's really uncomfortable, isn't it?
Hmm.
But there's this whole responsibility placed on her for his sin.
Yeah.
And that gets amplified in abusive marriages.
Yeah.
The responsibility gets put on the wife for the sin of the husband.
Hmm.
And
You
there's
talked,
so many other ways too.
yeah. Yeah, you talked too about all the different ways that abuse can impact a person's faith. And you used the examples from three different couples, but how, sometimes if the husband doesn't believe and he's abusive, he can pressure her to stop going to church,
Mhm.
or he can make her go to a church that she doesn't agree with, that is really misogynistic.
Yeah,
And
yeah, absolutely. So my husband did that. He told me that the Church of England and the Methodist churches that I preferred to go to were too woolly and liberal, and we used to go to churches that were very complementarian and because that's helpful
right,
for him to
right.
achieve what he wants because then he can say, well, I'm the head of the household, I lead, you have to do what I say,
Hmm.
you have to submit. If you were a better wife and you were a more godly wife, I wouldn't be behaving like this. I have to behave like this to keep you in check.
Right. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And have you found that in your work that complementarianism goes hand in hand with abuse often in churches?
I think it's probably more complicated than that, to be honest,
Hmm.
because we see there's been surveys about abuse in churches, and they've looked in a whole range of churches, and they found that abuse happens across denominations.
Yeah,
Domestic abuse happens in egalitarian churches as well.
absolutely.
But but with complementarianism, I think you've got that weapon already there, haven't you? And
Hmm.
the thing with abusers is they'll use whatever tools they've got and whatever weapons they've got. So a Christian man will use Christianity, a Muslim man will use Islam, a secular man who's not got any religion will just find other ways to
Hmm.
abuse. So a complementarian man will use the whole idea of headship and submission because it's there on a plate ready to go, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And so then when you're trying to heal from abuse, you also have to heal from all of these messages that you've been given about what it means to be a woman.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's really hard. There's another layer to that then.
Yeah. So I've tried to kind of cover that in the book and talk about
Hmm.
what does it mean to be a good Christian woman? Because we have this stereotype, don't we, of the good Christian woman who's quiet and peaceful and beautiful and you know
Who doesn't match up to any actual woman in
yeah,
the Bible. Yeah.
no, no. She keeps the house nice and clean and
Hmm.
she always looks beautiful but demure. And
Hmm.
yeah, we have this idea of what we should be as a woman, and a lot of it is we must never be angry.
Yeah.
But anger's a feeling, and it's a perfectly legitimate feeling, and there's no reason why we shouldn't feel angry,
Yeah. That
especially if
was
we're being
something that I
abused.
really found helpful in reading No Visible Scars is that you really spent a lot of time on a lot of these emotions that women have to work through. And I haven't seen that in a lot of other books that I've read. You're focusing so much on anger because, yeah, women coming out of an abusive relationship, you've got the grief, you've got the fear over your kids, but there must be so much anger too at everything, at your husband, at God, at everything.
Yeah, yeah. And I remember the first person who told me that I was allowed to be angry was a counsellor, just an NHS counsellor. And I'd always said, oh, if I have counselling, I want Christian counselling. But that wasn't available, so I just went via my doctors to just a regular counsellor. And I remember saying to him, I'm just so angry. And he said, well, you should be angry. You've been abused. It's not okay that you've been abused. And if you weren't angry, then I would be worried about you and worried that you had some kind of mental health problem because you should be angry if you've been
Yeah.
abused. It's normal. And it's not anger that's sin. It's what we
Right.
do with with anger that's
Hmm.
sin. So in the Bible it says, doesn't it? In your anger, do not sin. So the
Yeah.
Bible assumes we're going to be angry. It doesn't say if you get angry. It essentially says in your anger. So when you get angry, do
Yeah.
not sin. So it's not saying that we're not allowed to feel angry. It's about how we deal with that anger. And it's
Hmm.
okay to express that anger. It's okay to say, I'm really angry. This is not okay. What's happening to me? What's not okay is to sin when we're angry. And
Yeah.
that's the difference.
I think it's
That's the
interesting in
challenge.
scripture. Yeah, I think it's interesting in scripture too how often anger is the motivator to work towards justice. Like we look
Absolutely.
at in the prophets, especially in the Old Testament, we see anger over and over again. The prophets are expressing, and that moves them towards calling out for justice, and especially for the marginalized, the poor, and the oppressed. And often that's widows and orphans who are being mistreated by the powerful. And then we see that in Jesus too, like how anger motivates him to stand up for justice, in the temple or against the Pharisees who are piling on burdens on people. And I see that in what you've done as well is, you had this anger coming out of your own abusive relationship, but then that anger kind of lit a fire in you
Absolutely.
to
Absolutely. And
do something. Yeah.
yeah, and I'm still angry. I'm not angry at my ex-husband anymore. It's years and years and years ago. But I'm
Hmm.
angry that this is happening in the church. And I'm
Hmm.
angry that it happens in the church as much as it happens outside the church. Because we're supposed to be different. We're supposed to be a city on a hill, light to the world. And we're not. We're the same. We're
Yeah.
doing the same things. And that makes me so angry. And it makes me angry when the church is complicit in abuse and when religion is used to hurt people. So, I wake up every morning angry, and that's what motivates me. That's why I wrote this book.
Yeah.
So it's about using that anger, isn't it, to do good, to call for justice, not
Right.
just to get revenge, because that doesn't help anyone, does it?
And I mean, God shows every emotion in the Bible. Like our emotions, we're made in the image of God, and I think our emotions are also in the image of God. Like just as
Yeah.
God feels every emotion, He feels joy, He feels happiness, He feels anger, He feels love. Like He feels all the things that we do. But
Mm.
in those emotions, it moves Him to act, and we see this throughout Scripture, and we see this with Jesus too. And so I think, yeah, when these emotions that we are feeling in similar ways move us to be part of what we pray for in the Lord's Prayer, right? That thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And like it is God's will that there be justice. It is God's will that the oppressed are no longer oppressed, that abuse
Yeah.
stops.
Yeah,
And so,
absolutely.
yeah, our anger can lead us towards the kingdom of God if we channel it correctly. And I really like that part of your book, especially. So, what is the reception like? Tell me about the groups that you do.
So,
Anger.
No Visible Scars grew out of my Always Hopeful program. So I originally, when I used to work in a refuge and I used to run support groups, just general secular support groups for women recovering from abuse. And I had a lot of Christian women that would come because, lots of Christian women experience abuse. And because they knew I was a Christian, they would ask me questions. So we'd maybe cover anger in the group, and then the Christian women would come after me and afterwards and say, "Yeah, but are we supposed to be angry as Christians?" And so they would ask me questions about faith, and I thought there really needs to be a program like this for Christian women. So I wrote Always Hopeful, and Always Hopeful is an 11-week recovery program, and churches can run that program within their churches, or any Christian ministry can run it. Just like churches run, I don't know if you have alpha programs over there, but
Mhm.
and 12-step programs and things like that. They can run this as a recovery program for women, and I train them in how to support victims of domestic abuse, to help them. But sometimes I found that women were contacting me saying there isn't a program running near me. I can join an online one, but the timing's not working, that kind of thing. So there were lots of women who weren't getting to go on the Always Hopeful program. Sometimes women aren't ready to join a group. It can be a bit scary, can't it, walking into a into a room full of other people for the first time. So I wrote No Visible Scars so that women could access the same material that's in the Always Hopeful program from the comfort of their own home without having to join a group. But I really think there's no substitute for group work. So I always kind of say if you can join a group,
Yes.
it's it's so beautiful to watch women make that journey together and support one another. And I
Yeah.
think women get as much from being in a room with other people who get it as they
Yeah.
do from the actual material itself. And it's so lovely. Women come in week one, and they're a different woman when they finish in week 11.
Mhm.
We watch this really remarkable healing journey, and it's great. It's kind of like um, there's a feminist called Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, and she wrote that women for too long women have had to fold themselves into shapes to make themselves acceptable to other people. And it's
Mm.
like women come into Always Hopeful program all folded up, like they've been folded up and stuffed into a shape. And you watch them unfold throughout the course of the program and then spread the wings. And it's just beautiful. Beautiful. I
Yeah.
love it.
That is lovely. And I think there's so much in trauma work now that shows that community is so important for healing. And I think that's how God made us too. You think about the impact of God being a triune God, how God exists eternally in relationship. And and yeah, I think our healing needs to be at least partly in relationship too,
Yeah.
because it is in other people that yeah that we can get that affirmation and that love and yes, I think that's beautiful. So I would just encourage everybody. I'm going to put a link to your Always Hopeful program in the podcast notes, and of course to everywhere where you can get the book No Visible Scars, and so that people can check it out. Can people run it all over the world, or is it just in England?
All over the world, absolutely
All over
anywhere.
the
So
world.
they
Okay.
need training from me, but
Mm.
because of the wonderful power of Zoom now,
Yes.
honestly, if it wasn't for COVID-19 that made this, a thing that we do,
Hmm.
I don't know, but it's at least something good has come out of it. So I can do training via Zoom, and I run training workshops to train facilitators. It's a 3-day training. It's
Hmm.
really comprehensive. So often, church leaders will say to me, "Well, I don't know anything about abuse, and I don't know how to help people with trauma. That's so big." And it
Hmm.
is, but what's the alternative? Do nothing and leave them in the trauma?
Yeah.
We can't do nothing. We have to do something. But I give you all the training to do that. I'm a trained professional in looking after abuse victims, so I can help train you in how to do that. So we have a day learning what abuse is and how it impacts Christian women and how to support survivors. Then we have a day learning how to run a group program and how to run an effective group program. And then we have another day looking specifically at the content of the Always Hopeful program. So it's really comprehensive. Anyone can run it.
Yeah.
Once you've had the training, you just need to buy the materials, the books, and then
Hmm.
you're off and you can go.
That's lovely. Now, I ask this to a lot of women who do work in this space because it's hard to get actual numbers, but what is your best guess as to the incidence of abuse in marriages in pews in the church?
So we have a charity in England called Restored, and they've done some research into this. And in their research, they found that 25% of churchgoers reported experiencing at least one abusive incident in
Mhm.
their current relationship.
Yeah.
When they looked at past relationships, that number went up to 42%, which is terrifying.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
then there's other research as well, that kind of backs that up. The Evangelical Alliance did some research, and the Methodist Church have done some research, and it usually comes up very similar numbers to the national sort of statistics, which are
Hmm.
usually 1 in 4 or 1 in 3 women. So
Right.
it's very prevalent.
Yeah. And I know that I've seen several studies that show that among the most conservative Christians, it isn't necessarily that abuse is higher, although it might be slightly higher, but it's that women stay much longer
Yeah, yeah,
in
it
those
can be harder to
relationships.
leave. So
Yeah.
there's this really great study from, I think it's from Melbourne, and it looks at what churches can do to help women in those situations, what sort of things churches do when they get it right, but it
Hmm.
also looks at what things are factors within really any really it looks at all faith communities actually. What things are factors in faith communities that make it harder for women? And it's often teaching about divorce that makes it harder for them
Hmm.
to leave, teaching about gender roles that makes it harder for them to speak up and seek help, and protecting reputations. So often women will speak up, but the church will try and keep everything hush hush. And that silence and that shame and that stigma then goes on to the victim, which makes it harder for people to speak out and seek help. So it's
Yeah.
often seeking help that is the difficulty, and that often comes around notions of gender, which is what you tend
Right.
to see in more conservative churches.
Right. So we can do better than this. And here we've got some resources to help you all do better. So check them out
Yeah,
in the podcast notes and think about that. Like 1 in 4 women. So when you're at church, the next time you're at church, look around and just realize that 1 in 4 women, and you probably don't know who they are. Like it's probably not even who you think. Like,
no.
1 in 4 women, that's what's going on in their relationship.
When I
And
when
what are
I
we going
left
to do?
Yeah, when I left my husband, and told people why, several older women in church came up to me and said, "That happened to me too. I know where you're coming from. That happened to me too." And I couldn't believe the amount of people that I'd known for years and years and years who said,
Yeah.
"Yeah, I went through that," because
Yeah.
we just don't talk about it, and we
Yeah.
need to talk about it.
Hmm. Because how are we going to be a healthy church if this is happening in 1 in 4 marriages in the
Yeah,
pews?
yeah,
So
we
let's
can't.
be a
And
place of healing and
we
help
can't.
rather than a place that prolongs the problem. So
Yeah.
I love
And
what you've
although,
done. I really want to say again, like this is a book that it's unlike other books I've read because while there's a ton of information in it, it really invites women, it empowers women to learn and to make those connections themselves. And I really thought that was well done. So
yeah, and
thank
I've
you.
tried to make it gentle and not too difficult and not
Yeah.
too, I don't want women to feel like, oh, this is arduous.
Yes.
It's like I don't want it to be like an academic text. I want it to feel more like sitting down for a cup of tea with a friend
Hmm.
and
And that
talking.
really is, yeah, it's not like
Yeah,
you have to read 400 dense pages or nothing like
yeah,
that at all.
yeah.
This is really, really helpful. So thank you for creating this resource. I'll put a link in the podcast notes. And where can people find you, Sally?
You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. I'm Sally Hope, always hopeful.
Sally
And
Hope.
I've got a website as well, www.alwayshopeful.org.uk.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
It's always fun to talk to people from across the pond, and not just because I love the accents,
Hmm.
although I do.
Yes.
I always feel like I'm going home. Like we have such roots in England. So one of these days, I want to go visit all my UK people who
I know,
listen
that was so
in.
fun.
Yes, it really would be. But I love what she's doing.
Hmm.
And I love the fact that when, she was in an abusive relationship, she realized that there were so many people in the same situation. And so she got herself trained. She figured out how to help people. And now this has become her mission. And so I love how it's kind of one of those ways that God takes the negative stuff in our lives and he uses it for good. Not that that negative stuff ever was good.
No, or that it was something that was orchestrated in order that you might do something else.
Yes.
No, but it's the redemption. It's the redemption story.
Which is, I think, so beautiful.
Yeah.
Remember, October 2nd and 3rd is our simulcast. We are doing an event. Friday night, I'm giving my sex talk to women, and Saturday is an all-day marriage conference with Keith and me. And your church can still get in on it. It's one of those really cool simulcast things. I don't know how it works, but
we have hired someone who does know how it works.
I'm not running the technical part. So we have people who can get you set up and we'll get everything working for you. I just can't explain how it is done. But the time zones can be amended so you can still watch it at that time, but in your own time zone, or like a few hours delayed or something like that if you're in Pacific time. Or you can get access to the recordings and watch it anytime in the next 30 days.
Yes.
So if October 2nd and 3rd doesn't work for your church, but like 3 weeks
16th
later
does or something,
then you can do it then. So you still have time. It's really inexpensive. It's a way to bring me to your church and Keith to your church at a really inexpensive rate. So
well, and we've been asked for that for so long. We've been asking people saying like, we really need your message in our church, but like we can't afford a whole conference, right? Like, and that's a big thing, especially in these small churches that are doing their best, but the cheap resources are the toxic ones. We wanted to be able to offer a resource that was really affordable and wasn't toxic. So you've been asking for it.
So here
join.
is the marriage conference. We're going to have handouts. We're going to have like application steps people can put in place right now. So go check that out. The link is in the podcast notes. Check out No Visible Scars by Sally Hope. The link is in the podcast notes to that too, and the other links that we mentioned. And thank you for joining us on the Bare Marriage Podcast. If you missed last week's podcast and you didn't get our one sheet on all the problems with The Empowered Wife by Laura Doyle, or any of our one sheets like Power of a Praying Wife, Love and Respect, For Women Only, Lies Women Believe,
Every Man's Battle,
Every Man's Battle,
Yeah.
All kinds of them that we've done. I'll put the links to those too. And they are also all in our toolkit. So our toolkit is super inexpensive. You just pay whatever you want to pay. We don't even have a set price for it. But we have downloads that you can bring to your church, to your pastor, to your women's ministry leader, to your sister, whatever. The downloads are all on specific topics like modesty messages, or the idea that women are methadone for their husband's porn addictions, or the idea that all men struggle with lust. We have a sheet for all of these toxic messages, and what our surveys say about them, what our studies say, and better ways to reframe and talk about these issues. So I'll put a link to that too. And thank you for joining us on the Bare Marriage Podcast. We'll see you again next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.